Hey y'all, this is Auntie Ashley of the Clinical Cookout, and welcome to Intimacy Interlude. This is where we talk all things intimacy, relationships, communication, sex, all those topics that some people actually struggle to talk about, but we need to talk about if we want to have healthy relationships with other people. Well, hey y'all, and welcome back to Auntie Ashley's Interlude. Today, we are going to just dive headfirst into something that's really interesting, really taboo, and that a lot of people don't really know about, but they think they do. So, I wanted to talk to y'all a little bit today about kink and BDSM. Two words that have started to just show up in mainstream, and it used to not be that way. These are more so terms that used to be taboo. So, not a lot of people talked about them other than the people who practiced in that arena. So I just want to teach y'all the basics of BDSM today. And BDSM, it falls under the umbrella of kink. And what kink is a term that for a rich array of sexual practices, which include BDSM, fetishes, erotic role play, and virtually any other kind of erotic behavior. So these are the things that people like, but they don't necessarily like to talk about because people are uncomfortable talking about sex in general. So BDSM is a acronym that stands for, I got my notes up, y'all. Bondage, discipline, submission, dominance, sadism, and masochism. So these are all the terms that BDSM encompasses. A lot of people feel like they know what that is because they might have watched 50 Shades of Grey or read a certain book. Those don't really tell you what people who practice in these arenas actually feel, what they actually do, and what it's actually about. It just gives you a glimpse, and sometimes not a great glimpse, of what this kind of sex play actually is. So I'm going to break down some definitions for you. So bondage and discipline. Bondage refers to someone being physically restrained. Discipline refers to a set of rules and punishment, usually enforced by the dominant partner onto the submissive partner. So let's clear one thing up. In this particular case, because we did a whole show, hot sauce, about submission. Submission here is totally different. We are talking about someone who has consented to be submissive sexually because it is a turn on for them. So this is totally different from I want my wife to be submissive or I want my girl to be submissive. Not the same thing. All right, and we'll go back a little bit into that in a second. Submission dominance or sub-dom play is when one person, the sub, permits the dom to essentially be in charge. This may be an agreement you make for one night of play, or it may be a 24/7 arrangement. Again, the main thing is consent. Whenever we are discussing kink play, BDSM, fetishes, anything, it's about consent. Everyone involved has consented to what is about to happen. They have openly discussed what is about to happen. They are all in agreement and everyone is on the same page. So that is first and foremost. And then finally, sadism and masochism. Sadism is the enjoyment of doling out pain. So you like to be, let's say, the person with a whip hitting your partner. And masochism is the enjoyment of receiving pain. If you like both, you would be considered a sadomasochist. Now, clearing something up here as well. We often don't think of pain being pleasurable, but the reason why it can be is because pain is still a sensation. Certain pain that's just outright painful is not going to be pleasurable. When we, like, let's say you break your leg, that's just outright painful. That probably won't be pleasurable. But when we talk about pain in the sense of sadism and masochism, totally different. This is anywhere from light taps with a paddle or a whip to very hard taps with a paddle or a whip that actually leave marks. But for some people, that is pleasurable. So the reason why no one likes to talk about BDSM is because it, like I said earlier, it is very taboo. A lot of the things are not things that we understand if we've never looked into it or researched this particular area. So I'm going to give y'all a couple of basic BDSM dictionary terms, just in case you want to research it yourself or maybe try it out, get into it. You'll know these basic terms. Aftercare. This is a post-scene ritual intended to help the dominant and submissive wind down and check in with one another. This is checking in verbally, checking in emotionally, checking in to see how everyone is doing. And this is after you have experienced a BDSM ritual of some sort. Okay, next would be breath control play. This is restriction of oxygen to increase pleasure. This can be very dangerous if done incorrectly. And this is not okay for everybody based off of what you may have experienced in the past with certain traumas. Like if you've been choked in a violent situation, this might not be a good idea for you unless you are trying to get your power back, which is a whole nother discussion. But choking for some people is very, very sexual and very much a turn on. So light choking to kind of cause the person to asphyxiate a little bit can be pleasurable, can cause a stronger orgasm. Okay, next is your dominant, which is the partner who leads the power dynamic in a dominant submissive scene. Okay, so let's get one thing straight here, because I think a lot of people confuse what a dominant actually is. They feel like the dominant is this person that just has total control. It's all about what they say goes, and that is the basics of it. But in order to be a dominant, you really have to realize that your sub or the submissive person actually holds the power, because yes, they are doing what you say, but only to a certain extent. They have a power because you have to stop when they say stop. They have to give you consent. If you don't have consent, you have no power. So that power is not what people think it is. All right. Edge play. Edge play is something that I think a lot of people might really want to try. This is bringing your partner to the brink of orgasm, but not letting them orgasm. So this is good for particularly men to practice if they ejaculate too quickly. If you are a man and you deal with coming too quickly, edge play is something that you can practice around with to try to withhold or extend your orgasm. There's various things you can look up online to learn how to get better at that, but that's exactly what it is. You bring your partner to the brink of orgasm, but you don't let them orgasm, or they know how to hold off. They're edging. So let's see. Hard limits. This is an important term because what that means is limits that never will be negotiable. Everyone, whether you want to play in BDSM or play in any type of kink play, or you just want to be regular in your sex life, which is okay too, you still have hard limits. Everyone has something that they are not willing to do, that they will never be willing to do. And those are your hard limits. And it's good to verbally discuss those with any partner. Always discuss your hard limits because there's no compromise there. That's a hard boundary. You're not willing to compromise. Okay. Safe word. This is another important term. A safe word is a word or physical cue meant to end, stop, all play. So safe words are very important because if you are starting to get uncomfortable, even though you gave consent earlier, when you say this safe word, it literally means stop. It's no different than saying stop when you want someone to stop and people continue and then we get into rape. This is not that. This is porn will have you thinking that you don't have a safe word. You have a safe word because it's necessary when we're talking about consensual kink, consensual BDSM, consensual sex play. So that safe word can be anything. You just both have to know what it is. A switch is a partner who can be dominant or submissive. So this is a person who doesn't have a problem being in control and being the dominant, or relinquishing their control to a dominant and being a submissive. And then finally, the last one is vanilla, which is a non-kink BDSM activity. So if you ever heard someone say, oh, you like vanilla sex, that's just plain, missionary. Maybe you might try a little cowgirl, a little doggy style, just regular sex that we've all heard of, that we've all been willing to try. Nothing too outrageous or extreme. So if you are a vanilla person, which it is perfectly okay if you are, then it's a non-kink BDSM activity. So none of this that we are talking about right now. Okay, y'all. So now that I have basically read all of this terminology, I had notes. So if it looked like I was reading, I was reading. Sorry, y'all. I like to be a little bit prepared. But anyway, now that I have given you some basic definitions, pretty much giving you the basics of what kink, the specific kink of BDSM is, now I want to talk to y'all a little bit about how this ties into our mental health. So September is sex positive month. It's a lot of things, other things too, but it is also sex positive month. So I want y'all to really understand how kink and BDSM and any type of erotic sexual desires can be very natural and very normal. They do not mean that you have any type of mental health issues, and they do not come from or always come from trauma, because a lot of people feel like if you are into any of these things that I talked about earlier, that you must have had some sort of trauma in your life, sexual trauma, and that is just not true. It is not always true. You have people who are just very open sexually, and that is a part of who they are, and it's very freeing to them, and it's perfectly okay. They have no past trauma that pushed them into wanting to engage in sex play. So that's first. Now, a lot of the terms, or a couple of the terms you heard earlier, are also terms that have a negative connotation in society. Like when you hear sadism, you think sadistic. This is not that. If you are into sadism or masochism, this is not deviant to the point of being mentally unstable. This is not that. So I want to make sure I clarify that, because a lot of times people will say, well, all this stuff is for people who are on the fringes. No normal person would want to do this. And that's just not true. Statistically, especially for women, a lot of people actually are either already into or very interested in getting into this type of sex play, whether it's BDSM, whether it's erotic role playing, whatever. Okay? So, as I mentioned earlier, things like 50 Shades of Grey, if you are like me and you read Zane books growing up, which I was probably too young to be reading a Zane book, but I was, and I loved them. Those types of films and those types of books are the reason why we know a lot of women are actually interested in sex play, in different types of sex play and kink. We read those books. We go to those movies. 50 Shades of Grey literally sold out at the movie theater when it came out. So that tells us that there's a disconnect. There's some type of disconnect between women and their partner, whether that partner be another woman or a man. There's a disconnect because for some reason people think that women just aren't into sexual play and kink play. They feel like, no, my wife or my girlfriend wouldn't be into that. Personally, now this is my personal opinion. This is not research. This is a personal opinion of mine. Personally, I feel that a lot of men especially have trouble with the idea of their wife or their girlfriend being into these types of things because they then feel like, where did this come from? Why are you into this? Why would you be into this? But then they are into it as long as it's not their wife. If it's somebody at a strip club, if it's a sex worker, it's looked at differently. So for me, that's a problem because that means women are not allowed to openly talk about and experience things that they may really be into, things that they may really want to try and that are really okay. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into how to communicate with your partner and why communication in the area of sex play, kink, or anything is super important. All right, so communicating with your partner when it comes to sexual desires. So if you were to research it or if you were to ask any couples therapist, they will often say that the top 3 reasons people come to couples therapy, couples come, is because they are struggling with communication, they are having financial issues, or they are having intimacy slash sexual issues. That has been the go-to answer. Like, this is why people go to counseling, for these 3 reasons. And it's not necessarily wrong. They do. But it's a little bit more intricate than that. So when it comes to the communication, especially in the area of intimacy and sex, those 2 things actually go hand in hand, communication and intimacy. You can't really have one without the other. You will not be able to have an intimate relationship if you don't communicate. And if you don't have intimacy with your partner, you're not going to communicate well. So they kind of need each other. They need to balance each other out. So that being said, how do you discuss this with your partner? How do you discuss wanting to try something without fear of how they will look at you and judge you? So that's first. If you have built up your emotional intimacy, if y'all didn't watch the first Ashley's interlude, Auntie Ashley's interlude, go back and watch it. It talks about all the different types of intimacy. If you have built those intimacy types up in your relationship, then it should not be a fear that you will be judged for what you desire. You should be able to openly tell your partner, hey, this is interesting to me. This looks interesting. I want to try this. But if you are, test the waters a little bit, maybe turn on a certain movie or a certain show that exhibits things that you want to try and see your partner's reaction to that and then bring the conversation up. Sometimes we do need an icebreaker. Again, sex is a taboo subject for a lot of people, which bothers me because we have sex and we all enjoy having sex, but we struggle to talk about sex, which is a problem. With that being said, communicate this to your partner in a open, transparent way. Have that discussion. What do you like sexually? What don't you like sexually? What would you be willing to try and experiment with? Go to a toy store with your partner. That could be an actual fun experience and a good date night idea. It's also hilarious. I've gone to the toy store with my husband plenty of times, and it's a hilarious experience every time. So going to the toy store with your partner, starting out slowly. If you've never done anything out of the ordinary in your sex life and you want to start trying things, start out slowly. Start by adding things that are normal, regular things that you just haven't done, like candles, feathers, taking a shower together. That can be difficult though. Let me tell you right now, taking a shower together can be difficult. You might bust your ass, but it can still be a fun experience. Try having sex somewhere new. If you have no children to worry about in your home, instead of always having sex in your bedroom, have sex somewhere else. Have sex in the living room. Have sex in the kitchen. We have Clorox and disinfectant wipes. We can clean up. It's okay. You can sanitize. Try somewhere new though. Every time you implement something different into your sex life, it just spices it up. And then you won't have the fear of, I don't want our sex life to get dull. Or this is why some people don't want to get into long-term relationships and marriage, because it's like, oh, you guys sleep with the same person for the rest of your life. Well, if you make that exciting, it won't be a problem to sleep with the same person for the rest of your life. Oh, excuse me, y'all. Aside from that, make sure you also openly discuss anything you have a problem with. If you are in a relationship with someone and you love them, one of the things you will have to be comfortable discussing is your past possible traumas, past situations that could be blocking you from wanting to try things or blocking you in the area of sex. It's going to be very important to discuss those things and get counseling for those things, because you won't be able to explore and have the sex life you absolutely deserve if you don't process those past experiences first. You want to make sure that you are all the way healthy and have overall wellness in all areas, because that's the best way to have the best sex life. So, another thing I want to mention, communication is super essential if you are ethically non-monogamous. Ethical non-monogamy means that you are open and honest with your partners, that you are not monogamous. You are not with one person. So this could look like a man having two girlfriends or a woman having two boyfriends, whatever the makeup. There are more than two partners involved, but everyone is aware. There are no secrets. So this is not cheating. This is very different from cheating. Cheating involves deception. Ethical non-monogamy is complete and open honesty. And if you are into sex play and kink and BDSM and you are ethically non-monogamous, it is super important to be able to communicate with every single partner in that situation so that everyone is aware of what is happening. For example, because then you might get into, well, you want to go to a swingers club, and that's something totally different. You have to let your partners know that this is something that you want to try. So at the end of the day, the communication piece is all about being as open and as honest as you can. And understanding that if you feel the least bit afraid that you may be judged, then you need to work on building your intimacy with your partner, because you should not fear judgment of something that you desire or want to try. You should feel like, I can tell this person anything. And even if they don't necessarily like it or agree with it, they're not going to judge me. They're just going to say, I would never try that. I'm not interested. And that's okay. So y'all let me know. Let me know in comments and DMs, what do y'all like? What do y'all want to try? Have you ever had a situation with your partner where you felt you couldn't communicate to them that you wanted to try something new? Hit me up. Give me all your questions. I'm here for it. And I will see y'all next time. All right, y'all. This has been Auntie Ashley's Intimacy Interlude. I want to thank you for listening. And if you have any further questions or have suggestions about what you want to hear, you can join us once a month for our Ask a Live, or you can DM your questions directly to the Clinical Cookout. I'll see y'all next time.